Hello everyone, recently Raider Nick has been updating his mods and decided to make an Atlas rocket. Not a newer kind of Atlas rocket, one of the old style Atlas rockets where it has the booster engines on this kind of skirt. And those separate off and the core goes on and continues burning. So there is this old kind of Atlas rocket, the traditional Atlas rocket, and it led me to wonder what the heck I was going to do with an Atlas rocket if he makes it. I'm sort of past all that sort of thing. I'm mostly futuristic oriented at this point, looking at big rockets delivering large payloads to orbit, way beyond the capabilities of the old Atlas rocket. But there was one idea that came to mind. Now, this is not Raider Nick's Atlas rocket. This is the one from FASA. And that's because I'm not entirely sure Raider Nick wants me to do what I've done to this with his version. And what I've done is I've added tweak scale. I've tweak scaled it up. It is much larger than your normal Atlas rocket. And that is because the engines at the bottom are not your normal Atlas rocket engines. So they're a little bit sticking out. These are the F1 engines from Katniss's part pack. And so they are Canon F1s. Well, the outer ones are the Canon F1s. I've added a configuration for a vacuum variant, and that's what's at the center. So at the center we have this vacuum variant, which is only a mild improvement over the booster ones. It's 250 sea level, 317 vacuum is what I've gone for, and that's just to sort of match the center engine on the Atlas rocket. So that's the situation. Of course, because the F1s weren't made for this, their actuators are sort of sticking out there. That's not ideal, but hopefully it'll all work out and at least the booster engines will stage off properly. So that's what I hope for. Otherwise, this is a scaled up version of the LV-3C fuel tank. Not the largest of the Atlas core tanks, but we can hardly do any more because our sea level thrust weight ratio is 1.08 right now. We don't want it to go any less, so we're definitely not carrying any more. And we would probably have to scale down a bit if we were carrying an upper stage, but I'm going with the 1.5 stage deal. So no upper stage, no Centaur, no nothing. So it's just 3 F1 engines at the bottom and this one fuel tank feeding all 3, and then 2 of them I gotta stage off, and the center one will continue, as should be done with an Atlas all the time. The payload is 50 tons, so there's just a 50-ton tank of avgas, and we are going to see whether I can deliver that 50 tons to orbit. And I'm not going to use the sync guidance because it won't be able to figure out how the whole staging of the booster engines actually works in terms of calculating the trajectory, so I'm just going to launch it manually. And we will see how it goes. Now, I added tweak scale. It's being increased by the cube, of course. So the dry mass is going up commensurately, and this is a balloon tank situation, so I think it going up by the cube of the scaling is fair. If it was a more complicated kind of tank instead of a balloon tank, there might be some weight savings when you scale up. But I don't think there's any weight savings in this case when you scale up. So it's straight up by the cube. The fuel goes by the cube, and the dry mass should be going by the cube, assuming tweak scale is working properly. But the delta V figure doesn't seem to indicate that we've got some remarkable capability, and a payload mass of 50 tons is modest considering our start mass of 1,800 tons. Of course, that's because we don't have an upper stage here. That an upper stage certainly would help. We're just trying to keep it cheap at this point. And we don't know what's going to happen because of the complications of staging off the booster engines. I can't tell by the delta V. It says 8,000. What does that mean? Is that when we stage off the booster engines, will that be good enough or not? There's only one way to find out, really. So let's go. SA is on, throttle up. Katniss's F1 engines. Here we go. They have this very fancy ignition sequence. Of course, I didn't make a new model for the vacuum one. But overall, its vacuum efficiency bonus was marginal anyway. I better not turn so quickly. The thrust weight ratio is too low. Well, with such a simple rocket, the performance is pretty good. Though I probably should have launched during daylight. We will stage at 2 minutes and 14 seconds, which is sort of traditional for some of the variants of Atlas. Okay, off they go. Oh, alright. They are off cleanly. Good. That's one reason why I like the FASA variant, because at least it stages properly. Even though I've put completely different engines in this case. Well, right now we have enough, but we'll have to see. Alright, we'll try the fairings. Probably should have upped the ejection force, I didn't. But they were off cleanly. Well, clean enough. We're still okay. Well, we're just about right here. That's a high G-force right at the end. Okay, well, ended up a bit high there, but, well, we made it to orbit. 50 tons it is. So that's the situation with the simple Atlas with 3 F1 engines, though, again, the center one has the vacuum efficiency. Right now, our vessel mass is basically 75 tons, and we have negligible fuel remaining, it would seem. Well, I don't know. Well, that 22 meters per second is not including the residuals. We've got about 5 tons of residuals, so that's 50 tons up there. There's the engine. The tank must be really light, but then again, that's expected for the Atlas balloon tank. But that's why it's interesting, isn't it? Because the balloon tank of the Atlas rocket is especially light. Can you make it when it's this big? Who knows? You'll have to tell me. But what's our diameter here? We can judge from the payload adapter, 7.5 meters. So we went from 3.05 meters to 7.5 meter diameter. That's the diameter of this rocket with the 3 F1s. So that's the situation. And I left off the little verniers. We're not using those for steering. So that's another caveat. But it's sort of a cheaty rocket, but then that's how Atlas was. So there you go. Now, I don't know exactly what upper stage I want to put on this. Actually, the S4B doesn't fit too badly on here. Let's take a look at that. But once again, we don't have any way of definitely telling what the payload capacity is, either to low Earth orbit or the moon, because it's not going to tell us properly given the booster separation configuration. So you folks can make a guess. I'm not going to do it in this video. I'll do it in a subsequent video. I'll put it together. We're just going to have one J2. I used just the default F1s, not F1As down there. We'll get to F1As later. I'm going to put a regular old J2, well, at least the one that occurred late in the program. So there's all these, but I mean this 230K one, because that flew most of the crewed Apollo missions. Oh, I think I need the engine conditioning for the 3 ignitions. Okay. there it is put together, and right now we have the 50 tons up there. So make your guesses. I'm not gonna adjust the payload at the top. It's a fine looking rocket, really. We do need to adjust how much fuel there is in here. There's too much fuel. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it down to 90%. So we're gonna do it like that. There we go. Okay. Still a horrible thrust weight ratio at the start. And then there's the whole business of what happens when we get to that stage. Seems like a really long burn time. We might have to keep the booster engines for a little bit longer, so keep that in mind. And we will see what happens. So make your guesses, and then we'll find out. All right. So with that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.